Not half bad for a spicy day in LA.
That was great, Trey. Thanks. I guess we're gonna do it, man. Hey, this is Chris Kies for Premier Guitar, hanging out, I guess, in my house in Nashville, and Trey's in somewhere in a tone bunker in what, Los Angeles, Orange County.
Yeah. We'll say basically Los Angeles.
We don't want any the gear followers to just come knocking, so we'll leave it ambiguous.
They're about to find out what they wish they could steal from me.
Well, let's just give them a list, and we'll just start with the guitar that I have seen you with, and obviously in the behind you there, Trey is obviously from In Virtue, but more knownly to you guys as the dude from behind Gear Gods. The Kiesel, I've seen you play on numerous videos, and the In Virtue riff rundown you did for us last week. So tell me about that and kind of how you come to own that mad machine.
So this is probably my favorite guitar. It sucks to try and play favorites. It's not really important aside from the fact that I love it so much, and I love pretty much all of the things about it, and that's probably what makes it my favorite. Whereas there are some like specialty guitars that I have, or like certain features that I love about certain guitars that maybe I need for something in particular or whatever. This guitar is my favorite, like, overall, and I'm a very, very shallow man when it comes to guitars. Even though features are extremely important, playability, sound, all of that, I don't even think about those things until I pick out a shape that I like, and I'm big on Tele shapes. I had the opportunity to customize a Kiesel.
What are some of the highlights in this that you really you went through the build a Kiesel diagram and picked for yourself?
Sure. So this is the TL70 model. Actually, I think it's been discontinued in favor of the Solo. I'm not 100% sure, but the difference is basically that the TL70 is a neck through. I love neck through guitars. If I can get it, that's generally what I'll do. So this one is, like I said, basically Tele shape. 2 humbuckers. These are the Kiesel lithiums. 24 frets. Ebony fretboard. I actually generally prefer maple, but I wound up going with ebony on this, and it looks amazing. This is my favorite Kiesel headstock, the 3/4. Locking tuners, just a single volume knob and a 3-way switch.
No tone business, huh?
Yeah, no, I so rarely touch the tone knob that it basically just becomes a liability, where I'll be like, man, it's not really sounding quite right today. What's, man, some settings on my amp? We need a no, I just had the friggin' tone knob rolled down, and it just, just kill me. Like, what's the point? What are we doing with these tone knobs? Like, Strats come with 2 tone knobs? I'm like, who's out there fiddling with their tone knobs that much? So, it's cool. I have a couple guitars with tone knobs. I don't discriminate, but if I have the chance, I'm just not going to get it.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I tune for In Virtue and for most things as often as possible, down a whole step from standard. So this is A standard, A, D, G, C, F, A, D.
Now, would that be the tune-in that you used in the infamous, and I was a fan of it, but the Led Zeppelin video you recently did?
No. Chris, thanks for asking. I used neither that tuning nor that guitar. Instead, I used, because we wanted to do it a whole octave down, which is so silly and really dumb and fun, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I did that on my pretty much brand new Skirva 10 model, which is an 8-string, and then I tuned this down a whole step. Actually, I had to use a really wonky tuning because, for example, when I did, what is it called? Stairway, I had to do like I had to do it like E A D G B E, so like a 6-string guitar down an octave for the low 6 strings of the 8-string guitar, and then yeah, and for the solo I did that. So actually, I don't think I played the top 2 strings at all. Whatever. So this one's set up pretty similarly with the one knob and a 3-way switch. It's just a metal machine, you know. But at the risk of demonetizing this video for you, sounds fucking mean.
So right there, you split our audience in half. 50% of them are probably going to love that and be like, wow, I want more of that. So go check out Gear God's video for that. And 50
You're gonna put it
other
in the
percent
card right
have
here.
already started
on that side or
commenting in a way that I will see that and probably have to delete it. So be kind. Choose your words wisely.
Led Zeppelin is a sacred cow, and people have very strong feelings about it, and I just don't. I'm very wishy-washy about Led Zeppelin. I really like the Black Dog riff, and the rest of it's fine.
Well, back to the guitar. Now, was this another custom daddy, or is this
Yes. This Skirvison
yeah, what
is a
provoked you to
Polish...
get a headless guitar? Because I saw you did a video of pros and cons of the headless and...
Yeah,
What
the ups and downs of
provoked you?
headless
Yeah.
guitars. Well, I knew that if I was going to get an 8-string guitar, I would for sure want a headless. I do like headless guitars. I don't really like them for like the rock star element. You know, if I'm trying to do something that just like looks like rock and roll, like a music video, playing on stage, trying to be cool. The headless guitar is not really the way to go. You can see that it's strapped up kind of high. This is for like, you know, the nerdy shit, the prog crowd, which is great. I still love it. First of all, I love light guitars more than anything, and this thing weighs next to nothing. A headstock is always going to add weight.
Yeah.
I say add weight as if it's not the default to have a headstock. Having a headless guitar is always going to weigh less than a similar guitar with a headstock, but just having 8 strings makes a bigger guitar. It's going to weigh more naturally. So actually, but I think this guitar, even if it had a headstock, would not weigh a whole lot. It is so very light.
Is it chambered?
It's not. It's well, yeah, all solid. But you know, it's a pretty thin piece of wood. I always go for swamp ash as often as possible because generally it's the lightest. Although sometimes it just isn't. You know,
Yeah.
Wood wood doesn't conform to what we want it to.
It's nature, man.
But yeah, exactly. Trees don't care. Trees aren't worried about how much they're gonna weigh. All right.
What about pickups? Pickups there, Trey.
These are bare knuckles. This is a juggernaut, and I think this is an emerald. Yeah, I like that one.
So what would, like, other than doing some comical stuff, what and maybe in virtue sense or just a plain having fun sense, what are you gravitating towards this 8-string for? What
am I gonna do with an 8-string?
Yeah.
I ordered an 8-string because at the time I didn't have one. I now have 2, but I wanted to I just basically wanted to try it out in a better context than just like for 4 seconds at NAMM or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I feel like having more options is usually good, and as long as you're not chugging only on the lowest string. you would think that that's a thing that you don't want because it's kind of boring or whatever. But then you have one and you plug it in and you make this sound, and you're like, oh, it's so nice. It feels nice. It's like there's something just primal about a super distorted, really low note. Yeah, so that's an E. So that's the lowest note on a 4-string bass guitar. But it feels nice, it sounds good, and so I wrote a whole song just for the 8-string that doesn't use just the one 8-string. That's the classic thing that people complain about, like, oh, these friggin' gent kids, they get their 8-string guitars and all they do is chug on the low string. It's so boring. Sounds like a wet frat. And I wanted to do something that wasn't that. But naturally, one of those riffs kind of came out like that a little bit, etc. It's all on the low string, and then the rest of the song branches out quite a bit. But like it's so addictive. It's super addictive, and the main thing that I don't love about the 8-string is that in order to get all the way down there, you have to really reach. So you have to hold it up really high if you want to get all the way under there. And it's ergonomically not very viable for me, because having your wrist like this all the time, or for a lot of whatever you're playing on it, is just not the jam. It's a bad idea.
Fan frets, do they help with that issue?
It doesn't help with that particular issue, because you're still having to reach all the way across the fretboard. If the frets were straight, it wouldn't really make a difference. The ergonomic factor with I think with the multi-scale or fan fret thing is basically more so the string tension than anything else. Because with the whole reason that exists is to have more ideal string tension across the fretboard this way, and that makes it just way easier to play, because either they're all going to be too loose or they're all going to be too tight. And this way, especially on an 8-string, it's just more even across, which makes it easier to play, which makes it more ergonomic. Some people say that because the frets more match the spread of your fingers, that makes it easier to play. I haven't really found that to be true, but I can say that I would probably not get an 8-string without the multi-scale. On 7 and 6 string, it doesn't feel as important to me. I haven't really had a problem with it. The next one I'm going to show you is just a straight across 27-inch scale, and that feels fine to me. But on the 8-string, it gets progressively floppier if you at pitch, if you don't have added tension on that low string. So that's something I think you gotta have, especially when you go up to 8. It can be cool on 7s and 6s depending on how you tune it. I don't tune so low in general on the 6 or 7 that it really seems to make a difference. But the other thing about the multi-scale fan fret things is that the palm muting changes, because you have to compensate for where you put your chug hand. So like if I just go straight across, it changes as you go, because where you are in relation to the bridge or the saddle is different. And that's, you can just compensate for that. But in the moment, I sing and play guitar at the same time, and I don't want to have to worry about that at all, So it's something you could get used to, but in general, I prefer not multi-scale for that very reason. I like the other benefits, but for me, it's not worth the trade-off on 6 and 7 string.
Gotcha. Well, you kind of already alluded to it. I want to see this 27 you got sitting in the wings.
Sure. I think I forgot to mention, this is 20... Oh, you know what? It's 28... This one's 28 inches to 26 and a half, I think.
Oh.
So, this is my longest scale guitar. So this is my Kiesel Vader. It's a 27-inch one. Also neck through, like I said. Love the neck through. If for no other reason, then it usually means that you can get better upper fret access, because the heel, in general, is going to be less noticeable. You know, there's nothing... You don't have to have two chunks of wood so that you can screw them together. You know, some people think that bolt-on guitars sound better or whatever, and I don't know, maybe. But for me, it's a well worth the trade-off. I have never really noticed any super extreme difference in the tone.
I was gonna say, have you ever what about like maybe sustain? I know sometimes people will say that one way or the other, sustain can be an issue or a lack thereof.
I haven't really noticed that, but
plus you're playing with such high volume and a lot of times in distortion, so it's like it doesn't really.
Yeah, for metal, I think it matters a lot less, to be honest. Like, it seems kind of cheap, but you know, I mean, I record a lot of different kinds of music. I write a lot of different kinds of music, and I have other guitars that are a lot less for metal, you know, like I've got a Tele, like a proper Fender Tele that's not here at the moment, but I use that one a lot. That one is more, you know, more for the clean, mid-gain sort of thing. I love that, and that's got plenty of sustain for that kind of thing, so that's kind of my go-to.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But, so this is my other headless guitar, and I recorded our whole album on this one, for all the rhythm guitars and a good chunk of the leads, but this was the main one for that. It's, it just sounds so good.
I was gonna say, like, what do you dig about it that it did so much work on your personal record?
So, my biggest pet peeve on guitars, because I play hard, I pick pretty hard, the pitch wobble for notes when you just hit it too hard and it goes boing, you know, that bugs me so much that I put really thick strings for the low strings, and I try to go for a longer scale if I can get it. Which is funny because I started out, my very first review ever was the Keith Merrow KM7, the Schecter, and I hadn't played a long scale guitar before, and I complained about it, and that was only 26.5 inches. And now I actually prefer a 27, not just because of the increased string tension, but also because even on the higher frets and everything, you actually have bigger targets. The thing is that I suck at the guitar, and I need, you know, I don't want to miss. And like on a shorter scale guitar, I'll literally miss the notes, my friggin' ham fingers. And so, yeah, because the scale is longer, the frets, the space between the frets is actually going to be significantly bigger. So it's a bit more of a stretch down here, but I'm pretty used to that at this point and it doesn't bother me at all. So using even the same gauge that I use on like a 25.5 inch scale, like on the TL70 it's 25.5, and I don't change the string gauge when I go up to the 27, and they're pretty tight, like, but I can really rail on it without the pitch going wild.
What strings do you prefer, like gauge-wise?
If only I came prepared for the... So I use 68, 56, 40, 40, 40, 30, 17, 13, 10.
I feel like that was just like that NXS video where they're holding up the signs and they fall off. That was pretty dramatic.
Well, drama's the name of the game, bro. This is YouTube. We're going up against people like Logan Paul and girls who just talk about their boyfriends. Like, how am I supposed to get some attention if I don't fling strings around, you know? But I'm using Ernie Ball Slinkies, and I love those to death. I like really bright strings, and that's what they are. I have also used their Cobalt ones. Those are pretty cool. Definitely the most different string that I've ever used. They feel really, really interesting. It's really hard to describe, but I like those a lot. So that string gauge is pretty reasonable in the top end, right? Like a 10, 13, 17. That's pretty typical.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get down to this 56 and 68, and that's a lot. That's a big boy.
Yeah, it's barbed wire.
We're down a whole step, so that's pretty low. Not incredibly low, but that's pretty low, and it's a 27-inch scale, so it's pretty tight. But I don't have any of those pitch wobble problems, and so this was the one that was the best for rhythm guitar. And so, also, it's incredibly light and feels great to hold for a long time. So one of the biggest problems that I run into is if I'm playing a heavy guitar and I've got it, pulling on my shoulder all day, I start to get problems in my hands because, it basically pinches off these nerves that run all the way down your neck and down your arm, and that's bad news bears. Some dudes have no problem with this at all. They can wear a Les Paul all day long, down around their knees, bend their wrist like this, and have a great time. And that's great. Good for you. I can't do that. I wind up with some major problems. I actually wound up not playing guitar for a whole summer. I couldn't play guitar for months because I wound up with some major problems, some tendonitis and all kinds of stuff. So I'm pretty careful about that now. You may have noticed my nicely padded strap from Rock Ready. I have a billion of these. These are my favorite strap.
So in the interim, what have you done besides get different straps that obviously release the tension on your shoulder and pinch nerves? But is there anything else you do for warm-ups or anything to stretch your hands, or even just to keep that nasty carpal tunnel at bay and nerve damage?
So I use an ergonomic keyboard. Actually, this one is the best one that I've found, and it is also the cheapest. It's just this Microsoft ergonomic keyboard, super easy to use. And I think it's like $30 or $40. I've bought like 5 of them. The more expensive ones that are like $200 or $300, I don't really like them. And then I have a foot switch mouse click. No joke. Because the thing about, this one is called the Kinesis Savant Elite 2, which is the fanciest name of any foot switch thing in the world. But the main problem is when you're on the computer is the clicking motion, not so much the moving it around. So you outsource the click to your foot, and it helps immensely. This one is very expensive. You can actually get ones that are way cheaper. I think I spent like almost $200 on that, but it's well worth it. And I got a sit-stand desk.
Yeah, I got one of those.
This is another great tool for ergonomics, is being able to play while you're practicing, if nothing else, in like a classical position. You put your foot up on this, and then you put this on your knee going this way. And it's actually closer to what you would do when you're standing up and playing, because the guitar is like this. A lot of people sit down and they play like this, on their right knee, and then you stand up to play, and it's completely different. So it's actually a lot closer to what you'd be doing playing standing up in front of an audience or whatever. So it's, I think, better to get used to playing like that, like you're actually going to play, and do it like that. So those are just a couple of the things. I'm holding the guitar a little bit lower to look cool for the video, but in actuality, I usually play it up here because that allows a more neutral position for your wrist. Because the lower it is, the more squishy it gets, and you're either stressing out your nerves and tendons going this way, or kind of crushing them here. So the more neutral you are, the better, and the better it is ergonomically. Once again, a lot of people don't have any problem with this at all. I have to be pretty careful about it, and it's possible that you do too. But yeah, just being able to get as low as I need to go without too much flexion. I think this is called flexion and torsion. that works out pretty well for me. Of course, the longer scale and heavier string gauge works against that a little bit, but it's always a trade-off, you know what I mean? Like, the most ergonomically sound thing to do would be to not play guitar at all, but that is obviously not an option.
Well, tell me more about the Vader. You got that beautiful maple fretboard, but then also I love the finish.
So
on it.
this
like an Arctic
is
white
so actually the fretboard
sort.
is maple, bird's eye maple. Love bird's eye maple. That's my #1 favorite fretboard wood if I can get it. And this actually has one of, I think, only 2 when I got it. Maybe since then there's more, but it's actually a white Kiesel treated fretboard. It's pretty subtle, but it's a lot lighter than it would have been. Actually, you can see the between the side and the front. It's much lighter. So not super dramatic, but enough. And then the finish is like, I'm not even really sure what to call it, but yeah, it's like a nice flame maple top with like a white burst and then trans white in the middle. I have been on a quest to find a good trans white finish, and it's hard to come by because what I discovered is that there is no such thing as white dye, because if you dye something, you have to dye it a darker color than white. So if you're going to get a trans white finish, it's going to be a spray, and it's never going to look the same as like a dyed top.
We did a tour in the Gibson factory before they moved out of Memphis in 2009, 2010, and they mentioned that the hardest color that they did was white, and actually all of the Les Pauls and like solid body guitars that were made in Nashville at the time were either made there and shipped or made in Memphis, where the 35s were made, 335s, and they used a special day of the week to do just white paint for bodies because it was such a, to what you're saying, not only is that the user end not being happy, but I guess it's a pain in the ass to paint anything white when it comes to instruments. And I know from painting a house recently, white walls is a bitch too. so in any regard, I know that the headaches are all around from builder to
so
it's
fine. Like this one looks great. I'm very happy with this, and it sounds awesome. And this one I actually have a coil tap, which makes it even that much more flexible.
Trey, you have way too many guitars for us to show right now, but I'm glad that you're going to show us this Tele that you're going to talk to us about. Now that it's in your hands, it's over your shoulder. Tell me spec-wise what it is and what you dig about it and why it's still in the collection.
Sure. So, like I said, I love Teles. I like most things about them, namely just the friggin' look of it. Love the shape and but I also really love the sound. I love that kind of thin twang, especially because it's pretty opposite from what I'm usually using, trying to get a really beefy humbucker sound. I like having... there's no guitar that sits in a mix as good as a Tele. Obviously, it's for a completely different style of music in general. But this is an American Ultra Tele. I think it's new for this year. Oh God, was it this year or last year?
That was last year.
I think it's last year. I think it was new for 2019, and it's got some really cool features. A lot of Teles do not have good contours, which is one of the things that bugs me about a lot of it, but these new ones have a really cool little contour for your left hand and for your belly, which is good because I'm a fluffy boy. I need that.
The one thing that strikes me, and coming through Zoom and the small video I'm looking at of you, and I'm sure everyone will see it close up, is the binding off that blue is just popping. I love that.
It pops. In general, if I can't get a white guitar, I'm going to go for a blue one. Also really, really love blue. And maple neck, maple fretboard, locking tuners. You know, people drastically misunderstand locking tuners. They're like, well, you just gotta, you gotta wrap it real good. It's not gonna move. But that's, for me, I just want to be able to change my string in 2 seconds and not sit there and go, kill me. Kill me. Like, locking tuners, yes, stability can be much better, but just the fact that I can just and make all these noises, sound effects, Foley, the fact that I can just cut it off, not have to wrap it at all, that makes my whole life. So, very modern Tele. It's also got this, it's got the newest Fender noiseless pickups, and a little, like, second mode.
Yeah, it's like an S1 switch or something. Doesn't it do something like internally with the wiring? It kind of reroutes, I think it doesn't, it just go straight to the output?
It bypasses the compressor.
Yeah.
So that you can escape. I have no idea, but it's once again just a make sound different button. It's slightly higher output.
Yeah, I think it bypasses things so it goes straight out to the output.
That sounds like it could be.
But I do know that it's called the S1 button, and people, yeah, and people have been digging it.
Yeah, I love this thing. I record it a good bit. So I have, aside from Gear Gods and In Virtue, I also do like this solo thing. I actually have a whole other channel for it. It's just the Trey Xavier channel. There isn't a whole lot of stuff on there just yet, but this kind of stuff that I write for that on my Twitch channel, I do a lot of what I call like cinematic guitar. So I'll like write these songs that are kind of like movie soundtrack score stuff, but the guitar is just kind of like the melody instrument. And so this guitar winds up in a lot of that kind of thing. It's just like, it just sounds so good in almost any context.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, just play us through the different, the neck and the bridge and them together. Kind of hear what we got going on. Using like kind of a mid-gain type of a sound. And then that's the middle one. Neck position. And then with the what is apparently called the S1 button. On and off. And then middle, without, with. Yeah, I like it. I think it makes it a little beefier. Yeah.
Because, like I said, the thing that I like about the Tele, or one of the things, is sort of the thinness of the sound. But, if this is like your main guitar and you're playing a lot of different styles, or maybe just for certain parts of the song you need a little more oomph, that's going to come in really handy. Especially for like a little bit more of a high gain lead kind of a sound, you might need more like just... You don't want it to sound too like ice picky, because that's a danger with a Tele. So... yeah.
Well, cool, man.
So yeah,
I want you to put on maybe the Vader or the very first Kiesel you showed us, and walk us through. I mean, the Revs behind you, and what else you got working on the signal chain here, because I know people are dying to know the rest of your war chest.
The rest of the story.
Trey, we got you back on the Kiesel 7-string. Now let's talk about this amp that's been hiding behind us. It's been roaring, but it's been hiding. And now let's acknowledge the amp in the room and talk to me about that beast.
Yeah, so I use lots of different stuff. A lot of plug-in amp sims, a lot of floor amp sims. I've used rack amp sims. I use so many different amp sims and amp sounds. Just like I said, wanting to have the biggest possible toolbox. But I also love having a real big boy tube amp as often as possible. They're obviously a lot more expensive than a $100 plug-in or whatever, but this is, in my estimation, The greatest amp ever made in the history of time.
No hyperbole there.
I know. Well, if you've ever plugged into one, you will also be spouting such hyperbole. This is the Rev Generator 120 Mark II. It's, as you can see, customized with my various and sundry logos. We've got the Gear Gods logo. It says Trey Xavier. That's my name. Over here it says In Virtue. This is the old In Virtue logo. We have a new one, but I have not yet gotten a new faceplate. It's all white. That was also custom. It has 4 completely different channels. Not just like 4 different channels that are like copies of other amps or anything like that. The Rev design is completely 100% original. It's not like a boosted Marshall or a modded 5150 or something like that. It's completely from the ground up original, and it sounds incredible. So like, not only do I have a pretty unique sound in terms of like what most people will have, you know, who don't have access to something like this, a unique, amazing sound that's perfect for the kind of music that I play, and just has so many options and flexibility because it's a completely analog signal path, but it's digitally controlled. So I don't have the foot switch with me right now, but you can store presets in the foot switch, and it'll like through the digital like relay controls and stuff. There's certain aspects of it that you can control and save, so that when you do channel switching, you can actually do patch switching, kind of like you would on a modeler or something like that. So I think, aside from it just sounding the best of any amp I've ever used, it's also like flexible to the point of like you could almost have the same flexibility or similar flexibility to using a modeler, which to me, like, the convenience of a modeler is more why I use it than anything else. And I do get them to sound really, really good. But, you know, like, in a live situation, if you can haul something this size, you can also get tons of flexibility by having those patches rather than, just a channel switch, having to do a little dance every time. You can have a patch that, like, turns on, for example, the aggression level, as well as that changes the channel and turns on the fat or the bright, and the loop, or one of the 2 master volumes, so that, like, if you want a solo tone, you could have it switch to a different channel, turn the loop on where you've got your, like, delay pedal. You could turn on the bright so that you cut through a little bit more, and then have the volume louder because you've set the second master volume up a bit more.
Do you want to, Trey, cook through some of the channels quick and kind of give us a taste test of what's, what you got going on there between the 4 channels?
Absolutely. So I changed what it actually sounds. I changed the settings and everything depending a lot on whatever it is that I'm trying to get. Here's the clean channel. Just basically, let's flatten it out, okay? Super clean, very, very clean. Actually, even at high volumes, doesn't really get gritty almost at all. Channel 2 is like the crunch channel, right? So, yeah, just crunchy. And then there are 2 completely distinct original flavors of high gain, which is really what I need more than anything else, obviously. Or that's the most important thing. Having a good crunch and clean channel is like the best fucking gravy of all time. But if I don't have really good high gain, I'm not going to spend that much money on it. When it comes to the high gain channels, there's not just a gain knob. There's something called aggression levels, and as you push the aggression levels up, they're like, stepped. There's like no aggression level, and then what is it? Red, blue, and red.
What would you, Trey? What would you say is the difference between a standard gain knob and an aggression knob?
So a gain knob is like continuous, The aggression switch is like a preset amount of extra of more. So you can, for example, if I wanted to use just the purple channel for all of my high gain sounds, I can have a setting on the foot switch, like a patch, one with no aggression, and then if I wanted a ton of gain for my lead sound, I could have it on red aggression, and then I can just switch between the two of them with a single foot switch, so I don't have to turn the knob. It also does something else. It's not just more gain. I'm not that fancy, so I don't know exactly what it is, but I'll just let you hear the difference. So like, so that's it, no aggression. And then, I'm gonna turn the gate on. And then here it is on red aggression. So like I'll crank the gain all the way up. This is as gainy as it's gonna get. Super tight, really aggressive. That's without any of the switches or anything, super flat. That's no pedal, not boosted at all. This is just straight up guitar into amp.
It's angry.
So, it's so angry. What did I ever do to you to make you so angry? Okay, then I'll flatten it out a bit again. We'll head over to the red channel. Actually, you know what? Wait, hold on. So like, I also like to turn on the bright and fat switches. Because it makes it cut a little bit better. Once again, like, super important for the guitar tone to cut through the mix for a rhythm guitar, And there's a contour switch, which basically gives you a little bit of a scoop if you're cutting too much. And all of those things also exist on the red channel. The switches go both ways. So here's the red channel just flat. Also extraordinarily mean. And that's just gain at noon, everything at noon. Up the aggression level to blue. It's just a different kind of mean.
Now, I might be jumping ahead of myself, but a lot of times with these sorts of amps that go this angry, they have built-in noise gates. Does the Revv, or do you have that in a pedal somewhere?
This one does not. I am currently using, if we pan the camera, I'm using my Grandma Glenn's cock blocker gate, which is a great gate. I give Glenn a ton of shit, because that's what we do, but he made a good thing. Talk about angry. Look how angry this chicken is. He's got pentagrams for eyes, and he's spitting fire. Check this out. That's what it would sound like without it. The bird is angered by noise.
It is fed by anger.
Its rage is white hot at the buzz sound, at the noise. So, and it's so simple that an idiot could use it, which is good, because I am an idiot.
Proof.
So, proof. It's only got one knob. How do you blow that? So it does not have a built-in gate, but the thing is, honestly, like I said, it's set up in such a way that it's probably one of the best, maybe the best amp you could ever have to play live. But I only use it to record, so it actually doesn't matter if it has a gate or not to me.
Yeah.
A gate would for sure make it even just that much easier to use, one less pedal on your board. The Angle has a great gate built in. We'll get to that, but the Generator does not. But I haven't yet to find it that I didn't find it lacking until you suggested that it should have one. Okay, fine. No, it's yeah. But I'm usually using a gate of some kind. Either when I'm recording, I'm gonna gate it in post, manually, painfully, using strip silence and Pro Tools, or just use use the cock blocker or something like that. So,
all right, Trey, how is everyone hearing the Rev right now? Are they hearing it direct, or are you hearing it? Are we hearing it, I should say, through a speaker?
So, in spite of having this wall of Rev cabs over here, and loving real earth-shattering, super loud cabs, I don't really have, I don't have any kind of isolation box or a studio or proper studio where I can record these, and I need to record all the time. So I use what is probably the most indispensable tool in my entire arsenal, which is the 2 Notes Torpedo Reload. This thing does everything, but more importantly than anything else, it's a load box that'll allow me to take the signal out from here, the whole sound of the amp, okay, from the power section, and have it go into the reload and then out into my interface, which is a Universal Audio Apollo Twin Quad, which I also love so much.
Yeah, those are great.
And that goes straight into Pro Tools. Now, if you've ever done something like that, you'll know that you understand very quickly that the sound of a guitar is the sound of an amp through a cab. And so once it gets into the computer, then I'm going to load up some cab IRs, which are like a cab sim. So the reason that I actually prefer that for recording 100 times over a real cab is that, first of all, you're not married to the sound once you record it. And the cab sound, to me, is the most important part of the entire thing. Because if you ever mess around with loading in different cab sounds, it's absolutely night and day. Like, you can change the sound so drastically that I've come to believe that the sound of the cab sound that you're using, which is actually the sound of not just the cab, or the type of speaker that you're using, but also the microphone, the signal chain, microphone, preamp, the whole everything, the cable even to a certain extent. And those are all things that you can't change after the fact unless you're using a digital cab sim sound. So I like having that flexibility after the fact, especially since when you're sitting there playing it, you don't hear it the same. And I especially like having that kind of flexibility because when you're playing it, it doesn't sound the same as when you're just listening back. So if I had to use a mic on a cab, first of all, my poor neighbors, if you listen carefully, you can actually hear birds tweeting through my lav mic because the garage door is right there and I can see daylight, all right? I'm practically outside. So my poor neighbors would just die at the volume that I would need to crank it to make it sound right coming through a cab. This way, I've got it cranked way the hell up. I mean, well, okay, about halfway, but if this was going through the cab right now and I turned it on, we'd all die. That's so loud at 120 watts, even halfway. If I crank this up to whoop, much less 1, I can't even get it up to whoop without it being super loud, which is great if you're playing Shea Stadium or whatever. Why did I pick Shea Stadium?
Beatles, man.
Isn't that Chicago? Isn't that where you're from?
No, that's New York. Shea Stadium's where the Mets played in one of the Beatles' last concerts.
I don't know anything about baseball. I'm from fucking Boston, so if you're playing at Fenway, kid, great. If you're playing at Fenway, you're a baseball player, not a guitarist. Anyway, so this allows me to not just record crazy big amps really loud, to really get those tubes cooking if I want to. I can also change the sound so much in post and make it sound exactly like I want it to. Blend cab sounds together super easily. I put out 2 videos a week. I can't be like spending a lifetime engineering these sounds. And honestly, more than anything else, I spend time getting the cab sounds right, blending in different things that I like about different cabs. For example, right now, I'm using 2 of my own cab IR sounds from the Trey Xavier producer pack, which you can find on Lancaster Audio. So you can actually get the tones that I use in terms of the cab sounds. Right now I'm using like a blend of a Marshall 1960 Vintage and a Carvin Legacy cab because I love the high end on the Legacy and I like pretty much everything else about the Marshall Vintage. And then I blend them together in Lancaster Audio Pulse, which is a free cab loader. And but if I sit down later to take this thing that we've recorded and send it to you, and I go like, oh man, it sounds kind of harsh in the high end. Maybe I should use something else. I can swap it out, and what you're going to hear will be completely different. So I think that's definitely the best way to do it. And dudes think that because it's like digital in the computer or something, it's not going to sound as good because what they're used to hearing is these things rattling their friggin' nuggets standing 10 feet away. But there's no recording that sounds like that or feels like that, and it's pretty much impossible to capture unless you've got like all the time in the world in a real studio. So
you have neither.
Yeah, I can get much closer to that by using by using cab sims, blending them the right way, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and we're off to the races.
Is there anything else you want to say about the Rev? I feel like you've covered all the colors and the anger issues it has, but is there anything else that we should know about the generator? So
the sound that I've been most enamored with on it, that's what I'm going to show you right now, is like what I would probably actually do with it. I go back and forth with the red and purple channel as to which one is my favorite. Lately, I've been digging the red one. I thought the purple was my sound, and now I'm really liking the red one. But I like to give it a little bit more low end, little bit of extra bass or mid, and turn on the fat and bright switches. Yeah, killer.
That's a riff rifle there, son.
It's a riff rifle. You should have to get a license to operate one of these. It's the best. It's the best amp in the world. The only other amp that I want that I don't have is the Mesa Boogie JP2C. Super completely different from this, and that's my other favorite sound because I'm kind of like a Dream Theater John Petrucci tone fanatic.
Nothing wrong with that. What you had mentioned the Engel. What's the story behind the Engel?
So over here are the other 3 amps that I use the most, that I love so much. The Savage 120 Mark II from Engel. That's pretty new. I think it was new last year maybe, but whatever. It's the other big boy heavy amp that I like the most. Also, tons and tons of features. Very similar to the Rev in that it's like digitally controlled analog signal path. This one does have a built-in noise gate, which is really good. and just tons of little buttons that do all kinds of different things, different mid controls, some contours, shape buttons, like so much. I honestly have not even gotten that into it, because when I turned it on at basically flat, it sounded so good that I just like didn't almost do anything else with it. Then I'm also using the Rev D20. So the D20 is obviously considerably more adorable than the 120. It is 20 watts. It's a lunchbox head. I love lunchbox heads, because in spite of being a big tough metal guy, I like things that are cute, and I don't care who knows it. And lunchbox heads are cute. Man, I'll never ever crank something like this up, probably through a cab at home. It's just, there's no circumstances under which I would probably do that. So 20 watts is plenty if you're gonna, even for a gig, man. Like 22 watts is probably as much or more than you would need. This one has a 20 watt and a 4 watt switch. And fancy pants. Check this out. It has a built-in 2 notes torpedo cab loader thingy. So I can load my own cab sounds into here and go direct out to front of house. I don't even have to plug it into a cab if I don't want to. Or I can. Or I could do both. So that is fancy as hell.
Look at the big brain on Rev.
Yeah, they're extremely forward-thinking. Like, yeah, they want to make it as usable as possible, and it's just the best. Like you can see on the front here, there's this virtual cabinet selector knob, so you could even, like, for a different song or a different part of the gig or whatever, like different sets or whatever, you could switch to a different cab, or you can set it in the foot switch which cab you're using for which patch. What the hell? That's so much cool stuff. And if that wasn't enough, so this is like a pedal platform amp. It's mostly entirely clean. You can make it a little bit gritty. There's a boost, and you can turn the gain all the way up, and you'll get a little bit of grit out of it. But it's mostly clean. I have another one coming that's the G20. So this is D20 Dynamis 20. It's based on their Dynamis amp. The G20 is based on the Generator, and it's got the purple channel in it instead of a clean, or it's also got a clean sound, but it's the high gain part of it is the purple channel, and it sounds devastating, and it's this big. So I'm like, what? Maybe I kind of do want to use a tube amp in a live scenario. If it's going to be this big, and it's going to sound that good, and it's going to be that easy to use, stick a fork in me, bro. It's the future. This is what 2020 looks like, okay?
Get on board or get left behind.
Yeah. Like, why? What are you doing? So the G20 is literally coming this week. I wish I could have put it in here, but you can just imagine that it looks like this. But I think it might be black. I think it's gonna be black, and it just sounds more like this one. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It lights up. The little logo lights up when you change the color, just like on this one. Super great. And then beyond that, this one I just recently acquired, and kind of a similar deal. It's called the Blue Guitar Amp 1.
Oh, yeah.
This is a 100 watt amp. Look at this. This little tiny thing that weighs next to nothing is not just like a preamp. It's a whole amplifier. Like, you plug this into a cab and it'll go. It makes loud. Plug into cab, make loud. 100 watts. It's not like quite as flexible as the Rev ones, because although it does have reverb and a boost built in, and actually 4 completely different channels, it doesn't have like a built-in cab loader. It has like a direct out kind of cab sim thing, but it's just one sound. And but this thing, similar to the Rev and the Angle, sounds like the breath of God. Like the high gain channel is crushing. This was my biggest surprise of the year. Actually, I don't think anyone did it better than Ola England when he first plugs it in on his video about it. The face that he makes when he starts chugging on it says it all. You know, it's like, if I don't want to say like whatever. It's close enough to these other amps that for the price and the size, I was super impressed. So
You were sold.
This is it's the Iridium edition. I don't know if I said that. There's two different amp ones. There's the Mercury edition, which I have had and is very cool, but it's much more vintagey. The Iridium edition is the modern, super heavy, high gain, really tight and crunchy. Has these little switches on the side for a boost. You can set the boost per channel. It's basically like a tube screamer built in, and a built-in noise gate.
Trey, this is my favorite part of the situation that we call the rig rundown. I'm a pedal fanatic. Hello, my name is Chris. I have a problem with pedals. This time, unlike any other time, thank you for your support, Trey, is I don't get to see the pedals until now because you've been staging them in a way that all I could see were their bottoms.
Well, that's the best part anyway.
Please enlighten me and tell me what is going on with your signal chain.
Sure. Well, we have teased you long enough. Now we're going to show you the goods. So this is not like my pedal board, you know. I put this together for this. These are just the pedals that I use the most, mostly for recording, really just for recording. So the first thing is one of the most important things that you can have on your pedal board is a gate, a good gate. I'm using the cock blocker, like I said earlier, from my good buddy Glenn Fricker. This is a really good quality gate, super simple, one knob, one button, which is great because I'm dumb. But it's like a key style gate, so that means that the input triggers the gate, which is actually in the loop of the amp. So you put it in the effects loop, and that's important because then it comes after the preamp, because the preamp will just make, in a high gain amp, just makes noise kind of by itself. That's just the nature of what gain does. It raises the noise floor. And so if you only have the gate in front of the amp, you're only gating out the signal of your guitar and pedals and not the preamp noise. So this will make it completely dead silent, and that's great. That's what you want. That works great. It's kind of funny because it's an effect that doesn't make a sound. It's the opposite of like most effects pedals that make a noise. This one makes no noise. So actually, I'm going to leave it on. Moving on to this next pedal. This is an Arts in Bloodshed fuzz, hand painted. It looks so pretty. I cannot for the life of me remember what it's actually called, but it's the green and purple one, I guess. It sounds thusly. So you might think, Trey, that sounds terrible. That sounds like shit. But it's not. Fuzz in general kind of sounds gnarly, uncontrolled, wild. If you turn up the gain, it does even weirder things. Okay, that's horrendous. But the reason that I use this pedal is not for the sound by itself, but what I love to do, and I've done this on both of the In Virtue singles, is you take a little bit of this, okay, and you blend it in with like your typical high gain sound, and it makes the guitars pop. So on both of our singles, Purgatory, which is the first one from our forthcoming album, and then now our newest one, which is called Where the Edges Meet, we used like a typical high gain amp sound, and then layered in just a little bit of this pedal underneath it, and it gave it this whole other dimension. This is a trick that I learned from the Meshuggah producer, whose name escapes me at the moment, but this is something that they did on their most recent album, where they just used like kind of like a shitty broken amp sound is how he described it. But basically it kind of sounds like a fuzz pedal, so I tried that out and it worked gangbusters. I like this one the most because it has a 3-band EQ, and a lot of fuzz pedals don't have anything like that. So
that sounds like something similar that Matt Pike does a lot with Sleep, and I don't know if it translates in High and Fire, but I know for sure Sleep he uses like a really old shitty pig nose amp, and it does the same type of thing where it adds just little hair on the main guitar tracks, and it kind of just does this same special effect. Yeah,
that's pretty cool, and you know, this we're getting into kind of experimental territory with that. But if you layer a lot of sounds in your recordings or whatever, like that's a good thing to try. I really liked that a lot. Moving on, I really love boosting amps with overdrives for certain types of sounds. For certain amps especially, if you're using something that has maybe like not a very tight low end, or it's not very aggressive sounding, even if you want to boost something that's not a high gain amp into making it more high gain, a lot of those kinds of amps, the low end just doesn't really get along with a high gain metal sound. So here's a great example of an amp that always needs to be boosted pretty much 100% of the time. Mesa Boogie Rectifier, which you plug straight in and it doesn't sound good. I don't like it at all. So you need something in front of it. This is the Aris Effects Brutal Drive. I actually use their Savage Drive more, but this one is pretty much the same thing but a little bit different flavor, and it does the same thing. So what you do with an overdrive as a boost pedal is that it shapes the tone and gives you a little more output, so it hits the front of the amp harder, and you can also add a little bit of dirt. So this one has bite, tight, dirt, and volume knobs, and they basically the tight is like a high pass, so it shovels out a lot of that low end, and the bite is like a little bit of more treble, and that's going to sound different than if you turn up the treble knob on the amp, because it's just reacting differently. Dirt is, of course, gain. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use the green channel on the Revv because it's the crunch channel. It's not really made for high gain, but what do I do? Okay, like here it is with the gain. I'm looking at the wrong place. This is it with the gain all the way up. No pedal. Really nice, warm, crunchy sound. But let's blast it into the stratosphere and try to make it a little more metal friendly. That's a bit much. That's I turned the tight knob the wrong way. Too much. But okay, check it out. That's with the tight and bite at sort of nominal. A little bit of dirt. Let's turn the tight and bite up a little more. All of a sudden it's a chug machine. What the hell? That's so sick. You can make it even dirtier. So that'll work with like a sort of mid-gain sound like this if you want to get a lot more juice out of it and also shape it a little bit more. So this is like an indispensable tool as far as I'm concerned. Something like this is just the one that I use. It gets the job done. We've used it we used it on all of our new album, I think. I kind of left it up to the producer, so I don't know exactly what's going on in there, but and then the final one is like a little bit more hi-fi of an overdrive pedal. This one is brand spanking new, and I instantly super dug it. This is the I Scream pedal from Iconic Guitars. So like here, this is the clean channel on the Revv. Okay, and then lot of overdrive pedals, like your typical tube screamer type of sound, it sort of narrows the frequency range a bit. This one's a little more like full frequency, which I like for certain applications, especially like just kind of... you know, sort of middle of the road, mid-gain, rock types of sounds. You can get there. This isn't going to give you... Oh, that's with the tone all the way up. Hello. You know, by itself, it's still a good bit of gain, but not... You know, it's not going to replace like your high-gain channel. But, you know...
yeah, it kind of sits... I feel like just hearing it through the headphones, it kind of sounds like it sits between Rev channels 2 and 3. So, like, it makes it like a Rev machine, like a 5-channel amp. I have like a 615.
Yeah. It's still keeps a lot of the high end and low end. It doesn't really cut off quite as much. So like not as narrowing as a tube screamer. Still, but so let's also try using it. Let's do this. Let's turn the gain off entirely. So like, for example, here is the red channel on the Rev. This is channel 4. Kind of the juicier of the channels, for sure. But, you know, let's say we want to tighten it up even a bit further or boost it a bit. You know, just gives it a little bit more without, or a lot more. Actually, the volume was not even up that much. Let's crank it all the way up. You know, just really push your amp that much more. The Rev does not necessarily need more drive. Okay, this was at no aggression level, gain at like noon. But maybe your amp needs more. The Ice Scream does it, and it sounds really good. It's like, you can kind of use it like a tube screamer or like a drive pedal, like a typical drive pedal, to boost your amp if you want it to be a little more full frequency. So I've really been enjoying this quite a bit. And that's pretty much all the pedals I've been using. I have a bunch of like weird stuff that sometimes gets used. You know, anything that I can't reproduce in Pro Tools with a plugin, I like to have a pedal. And, or like, not that I like to have a pedal, like there are some pedals that I need to get a certain sound. So.
But these are kind of like your meat and potatoes. This is what you got, and then you can kind of tweak on your end when you're done with everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man. Well, we talked about the pedals, and I don't want to be shrewd or anything, but since we can't hear it, I know you didn't have it set up to do this, but let's at least talk about what's in the rack so people can at least understand what you have working on beyond just what we're hearing today.
Yeah. So the thing about the rack is that it's not so important what exactly it sounds like. It's the functionality of it anyway. So let's get into that just a scotch.
All right, Trey, rack me Amadeus. Tell me about what's going on in those shelves.
Sick.
Those spaces.
It's 2020. You know, touring is hard. It's expensive. And smaller bands need to be as self-contained as possible and be able to tour as cheap as you possibly can. You know, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be touring with your own in-ear monitor guy, your own, maybe your own sound guy, but for monitors, probably not. If you don't have roadies or a crew, you know, you don't want to be hauling a ton of crap in and out every night, and you want to be able to set up and break down super fast. So, for that purpose, I created this all-in-one rack. Now, I'm not going to give you every single little detail about it, but I'm going to give you the long and short of what it is. So, you may have seen bands using modelers live. You know, they'll use like rack mount stuff like Axe FX, rack mount Helix, or like a Kemper, or anything like that. So, the problem with those isn't whether or not they sound good, because they do. I love that kind of stuff. It's that they kind of take up 2 or 3 racks, and we've got 2 guitar players and a bass player. We don't want to use up that much space in this little tiny rack, so we've got a secret. and that is the Line 6 HX Stomp, which is a full-featured Helix modeler that just has a couple of limitations, but it's this big. Look how tiny they are. So we have modeling for all three string players in the band, both guitars and bass. All of the tones are in here, okay? And if you're thinking, yeah, but Trey, how do you foot switch when they're inside the rack? I run over and push the button with my finger. That's a lie. We have everything all synced up through this Cymatic Audio LP16, which sends MIDI signals to all of these and switches our patches in real time. It also sends out a click track to our in-ear monitors and any backing tracks that we have, like a lot of orchestral stuff, you know, some backing vocals, backing choir parts, stuff like that. So,
how does that get triggered from the start of the show? Does someone hit, I guess, the space bar, or does it get triggered on the drum hit?
There's a play button. So you just hit play, and you can either have it stop in between songs and push it every time, or you could have it play a whole set. You know, it depends on how you have it set up.
Gotcha.
So there's actually a foot switch that you can plug into here. So our whole set is loaded onto this little thumb drive that goes in here, and it does everything. And the coolest part about this thing is that it doesn't. You don't have to have a laptop. This cuts the laptop out of the equation. I can't tell you how many times I've seen bands, big bands, have to stop their set in the middle of a song because the friggin' laptop took a shit, and whatever, you know, Ableton or whatever program they're running was running the whole show, and it went down. This is a dedicated little unit that does just this one thing. You know, you're not checking your email on it. You can't download a virus onto this, and it's so amazing, and it's perfect for that. And so we have all the playback, all our modeling. This thing, which we use to because we don't want to use bring our own drum mics and mic up the drums ourselves and then run all that into here. You just use you just tap into the monitor feed from the house monitor feed using this sound tap from Ultimate Ears. You can literally unplug a monitor, plug it in here, plug it into your system, and then plug it back out here, back into the monitor, and steal the feed off of that. And you can have the sound guy just put the drums in it, and then that goes into the Behringer X32 rack, where we route everything into our in-ears, and then back out to front of house. So this is, we plug, let me see. So what am I doing? Right, so the guitars go into here. Vocal mics, keyboards, everything goes into here so that we can run our own in-ear monitor mixes, and we don't have to have a separate guy. You can, what's this called?
Do it on mobile control.
Yeah.
App.
You can mix your own in-ear monitor mix on your phone, and so if you've got too much of something or not enough, you just up and down like that. It's completely self-contained. These are our wireless units for our in-ears. These are our guitar wireless things, power, and that's basically everything. So when we show up, we bring the drums, keyboard, guitars, and this, and plop it down on stage, plug everything in, and go. It's about as fast as you could possibly imagine. And especially if you're not the headliner, you know, if you're an opening band, you'd be lucky to get a sound check, much less a line check. So you want to be able to do it as fast as possible, not piss off the headliner, and so that you can worry about all the other stuff, you know, like maybe getting a line check or anything like that. And it's very expensive to put together, but still going to save you money in the long run because you don't have to hire another entire human being to come and do that particular job.
I know when we did the interview, Rig Rundown with Aaron from Intervals, he was speaking along the same wavelength that you are about how much time and eventual money that he saved because he did the XFX 3, and then like you're saying, he had everything mapped out through the whole set. And not only was it a kind of a freeing experience on stage, but he was also able to let that be a situation where he could have it set up in, I think he said 10 to 15 minutes, man.
Yeah, it's wild. So we also
Yeah.
did a rig video with Aaron, and that was a little bit part of the inspiration for this. That and Fluff, my friend Fluff, whose band is called Dragged Under. At the time they were Rest Repose. He built something similar to this, but then they were still using like amp heads and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to deal with any of that. Let's shrink it down as far as it can go. And then the friggin' HX Stomp came out, and I was already using the Helix. I used like a Helix floorboard for a while. The big, I think it was the LT, and I used Helix Native, and then they came out with this, and it's this big. And we don't use like big signal chains. The only limitation really is that you can only use, I think, 6 effects blocks. And I'll probably never use that much in one thing.
Yeah.
So it's all in there, and we can fit all of it into like a 2 or 2.5 space rack. Wild. And in case it doesn't get any better than that, now the Helix has, with the most recent update, it has both of the high gain channels from the Rev 120 modeled in there. So that can be our
You're
that's
one
our sound
excited
now.
boy.
And it's
Yeah, you're one excited boy.
I'm so excited. And of course, this would be the year that everything gets canceled and there's no chance we're going to tour or play live shows. So this thing's going to sit here.
Well, there's always next year.
There's always next year. And we've got it. And we'll be ready. We're ready for you, 2021. Invirtue's coming for you.
I felt like all of a sudden it just shifted into like a WWF promo from like 1992 with Mean
Listen,
Gene
brother.
Okerlund.
2021. Invirtue coming for you. I don't know which.
Man, I wish I could end it better than that, Trey. I really do appreciate you talking to us. You opened up your home, your heart, and your riff station and showed us all the goods. I appreciate you, man. And if you've hung out this long, you already dig Trey and what he does. And if you don't know, you got to go check out Gear Gods and subscribe to that. If you haven't subscribed to Premier Guitar, you should probably do that first. Trey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Hell yeah, thank you. This was wild. I'm usually on the other side of the camera for this. It was so cool getting to have the cameras pointed at me and do it like this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Peace out.
Peace out. Bye.